Now what we're going to talk about is doing some fast and easy quilting. You could on your serger, and what you're going to do is take advantage of a decorative stitch. And actually this idea came from Jenny Raymond. She's in England and she does a lot of three-dimensional things. Lori Hernandez on the Baby Lock channel, or on her channel, does a whole quilt of nothing but stripped that looks really cute. So anyway, this is going to be the basis of the quilt. And notice I'm being real subtle. So I'm using my decorative threads in my loopers. So I matched a green embroidery thread and a salmon embroidery thread in the lower looper. And for this one, you can make this any size you want. If you want the whole quilt to be nothing but stripes, hey, go for it. You would just cut, and however big you want it to be. This I cut 2-inch strips, and I believe for what I did, I think I cut 4 2-inch strips to make a set of blocks, or a set of 2 blocks. So anyway, here's what we did, is I have thread up my machine. Okay, I have set up my machine for a 3-thread narrow overlock with a slightly wider stitch. If you notice, if you turn the dial, that's the top one on the inside, that controls the cut of your blade. Stitch finger moves accordingly. So you would take your strips, get another salmon one. I just cut the width of or the length of the fabric, selvage to selvage, 2 inches. You're going to put your pieces right or wrong sides together here. So it'll be wrong sides together, and you just, and always, if you're doing it multicolored, different colors, you can do it solid, you could do 1-inch strips, 3-inch strips, whatever you like. But if you're doing it 2 different colors, you want to put the same color on the top, especially if I have 2 different colors. I have like a salmon pink in my lower looper and a green decorative thread in my upper looper, and I have green serger thread in my needle. I know we always tell you that decorative thread is not for sewing. It's not going to hold things together. It's not your seams, your clothes will fall apart. It is only a very, very loosely twisted thread and does not do well for seams. However, you're going to pick one of these 2 colors, or you could even do the same color on both loopers, and you're going to pick your best thread, regular sewing thread, or your serger thread for the needle. Because what holds your seam together really is just the needle. The needle thread is what holds it together. The looper threads just weave around the outside and hold the edges of the fabric in. It doesn't really have any stress on it, so you can use decorative threads, no problem. You could even, if you really wanted to go fancy and really thick, you could use your thicker threads. This one is a designer 7, and here's a designer 6, and yeah, I just picked 2 colors because I'm going to also show you how you can bind the edges of your quilt together using those thicker threads. You can use pearl crown rayon, you can use 12 weight sulky, 30 weight, whatever. Your thicker threads actually look better than your thinner ones. So when you're sewing your strips together and they're 2 different colors, always pick the same color for the top. So I'm going to pick green for the top, and I've just set it, and I've set my stitch length to small. You want to run a test to see what you like and what looks good. So I'm just going to sew this. And one way, I put a mark on the side where I want my seam to go, right at the edge of the fabric, because if you cut off fabric, you want to be consistent, because with piecing, it's not so much that you get an accurate 1/4 inch, because if you're using the narrow overlock, that's approximately a 1/4 inch seam, especially if you put it on a 4.0 width or blade width. But whatever it is, be consistent, okay? So, all I usually do is I will sit there and just hold my finger here to help. I put a mark right here, if you can see it, so that it can be a little more consistent. Also, putting your finger right here helps the machine from traveling all over the place. You see what it does? It goes on vacation. Set it back in my cabinet on the other side of the room. I have mine bolted. I bolted into the table because I sew fast. I'm going to cut it in half. Actually, if you're doing a lot of them, you would, again, you've got 2 sets done, that you would put your green, open it up, match wrong sides together. Okay. You would, if you were doing it all strip, you would keep doing this until you got the quilt length as long as you wanted it. Okay, again, I'm going to do this one. And there we go. It's running. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. This is just simple, straight serging. Because sergers are more than just for finishing the edges of seams. I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to cut my ends straight because they're crooked. They're all different lengths, which happens. There's no 2 bolts of fabric the exact same width. I probably press this all to one side, although we're going to be doing something much more interesting. And once again, now I have 2 sets of 4, so I really want to do another set. So we're going to put wrong sides together for this pass. And that's plenty long enough. So I'm going to cut this in half again, and this gives me 2 blocks. Okay, so I would usually use a rotary cutter, and actually I'm done pretty much with this for now. Get out of here, I don't need that computer anymore. Okay, I'm just going to cut it in half, and I'm not going to press it, but normally I would press everything to one side. So I'm going to just cutting it in half, and not very neatly either. Okay. Now usually I want it to be as wide as it is long, but I found that it wasn't, that one side is longer, so I ended up cutting the salmon piece off, and I just simply, you could unsew it or just not put that salmon on there if you're doing a bunch of them, but I'm just going to cut it off for now because I don't need it. And I'm going to work with the greens on the outsides. Because I have a little extra. And one more. I could leave the decorative thread on there. I had pressed this all to one side, which I've done with these. I've just pressed them all to one side. So now I'm going to start putting them together. So I'm going to, and I'm just going to try to get this as straight as I can. Okay, so put this side. Now, I want to sew all of these in one direction at first. Okay, so I am going to put this, I can clip it together or not. Okay. Okay, so I'm setting this up. I'm just going to use the same thread here, but I am going to lengthen my stitch length to about a 2.5, which is normal seam length, and I'm just going to sew. Actually, I want these wrong sides or right sides together. Okay, but you want everything going in the same direction. So again, I'm going to sew. Okay, my light just went off. Okay. And I'm just sewing all of these tabs down this way. Okay. I have a little extra. I'll square it up later. I am not too concerned. And I could make these all go the same way and I'd be just as happy. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. So again, I'm going to sew. Okay, let's see, I want these to go up. So what I did was, these are up, I want these to go up also. So I'm going to, again, sew this. I'm going to sew it from this end, because it's easier to push them down than to push them up. And you can clip these if you like. This one came out better. Okay. And then we will put our quilt together. Okay. So we want one to go this way and one to go this way. Okay, and we'll sew them together. Okay. And I want to make it opposite. Where one is going horizontal, I want the other one to go vertical. Okay, over here. Okay, and I'm going to just nest these together, put a couple of clips just to hold it while I sew it. And again, you just have to make a decision on this one whether you want it to go one way or the other. Just make sure that they all go in the same direction. Okay, so up. These are going to go up. Okay. And sew the rows together. All of those facing upwards on this side. It doesn't really matter which way they face, just as long as they're all going the same way. And you will see why we need that in a minute. these down. Doesn't matter. It's easier if you can press it first, because then they stay. These don't want to stay. And you would keep adding blocks like this, do it into rows and then columns, till this quilt is as big as you want it. It is now much bigger than I want it. So I'm going to put this aside and see, I'll lay it out. I would press it all out, then we're going to put it with a backing and a batting. And you know what, I'm not going to do this whole thing today. I'm only going to do part of it, because I didn't have a big enough piece of fabric. So anyway, here's my backing. And I'm only going to do part of it. And then here is my batting. Okay. There we go. You could spray it together depending how big it is. I'm only going to do part of this, so actually, so that this will stay in the camera, I am going to simply do half of it. So I'm going to cut this back apart. I'm only going to do part of it. So, I know Jerry's contrary today. I was going to do a whole quilt like this, but I don't. I'm working on so many quilts, and I don't need another quilt just for the cat. Okay, so anyway, here's my, let's just say this is my quilt right here. Actually, I'm just going to do one block. Forget this, I'm just going to do the one block. Because I want to have time to show you how to bind this as well. And I want to do a whole thing. Alright, get rid of all these. So we have one. Okay, and I'm just going to spread this out and cut around it. There's my little quilt. Okay. So, I want to get my chalk out and a ruler. And I'm going to put, you can put a grid on there, or if you're using your Solaris or the Dream Machine, you can simply, let me straighten these out so that they'll stay. You could spray them, which I'm not going to, but I'm going to make marks on it so I can have some place reference marks. I'll put one in the middle, and I'll probably put one every 1.25 inches apart. And a grid. So if your lines, can you see that? You know, I didn't even look to see if you can see that. Let me go better here. Okay. So I'm doing this about 1.25 inches apart. If you have the Triumph or the Ovation, this would be easy enough to quilt right on your serger. I don't. This one would be a little more difficult, so, but you know something? We can use a sewing machine. So I'm going to use a sewing machine. Alrighty. So anyway, I've got my lines drawn. I'm going to come over here to the sewing machine. I'm going to start following the lines, and I usually will start in the middle, or you could start at one end, and if you've got it together, if you've got it sprayed together, it should be fine. But I'm going to just start in the middle. Alrighty, here we go. I'm just going straight, and I'm pushing them all in one direction. going to turn it over. As Jenny Raymond called it, she said she would twiddle it to the other side. So you're pushing it the other way. So all of these get pushed down. Now come on this side. Now if you've got the guide, you don't have to make the marks. I like to make the marks because then I can plan which way these go. Okay, we'll turn it around, do the other sides, and you start to get this really interesting effect. Plus you are quilting your quilt at the same time. Trash cans on the other side of the room. This way. So every other one is being turned in the opposite direction. This one goes this way. Now if I had sewed my seam first to where one was tied into one way or the other, then I would start there. And this one I'm just going to leave it down. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. If you have, when you're trying to plan whether the ends are going to be up or down, whatever you can, that's why I always like to draw them. But if you want the ends to end on a different side, in other words, these are going up and these are going down, you want an even number of stitch rows. If you wanted them to both be in the same direction, you would have an odd number of stitch rows. So this is actually would be done. It's quilted on the back. It's channel quilted on the back, and it's ready to be bound. Of course, this is not a more beautiful quilt. You could bind it traditionally. Usually what I would do is I would sew down the ends or near the ends to whichever way they're going to go. Mostly, and then I would probably sew all the way around. Just to stitch the edges of the quilt to the, just put all the layers together. But it's not necessary. Okay. And see, that really makes an interesting effect. And if you have one side going up, vertical, the other horizontal, it really makes for a cute quilt. Now you could do these in individual blocks and then sew them together like as a quilt as you go type thing where you would put your sashing and your batting in the sashing and do it quilt as you go. You could do that. But this is really cute and it really adds some really interesting texture. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to bind this thing because you're going to think I've lost my mind, but I haven't. Now I got this idea from Lori Hernandez, who's a baby lock educator and probably one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. And she's awesome. She does this far better than I do. Now she usually trims and her quilt first, and I'm just going to pretend, I'll pretend I've done it with a rotary cutter, okay? It's not quite. I'm just going to do one end. Okay, so now I'm going to set up my quilt. I'm going to take these for a 3-thread wide, so I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these threads. Sew my threads out. Remove the threads. Okay. Very thick thread. This is going to be best if you're picking really thick threads. So I'm going to thread my lower looper with the red. Okay, and my upper looper with the green. And these are really thick. Okay. And I'm going to change my needle to the left. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I will decide later whether I'm going to use the right or the left needle. You pick the one you like. These do not like threading into these ports. They really don't like it. In order to get these to thread through the loopers, these air jet loopers, or revolutionaire, there's all kinds of names for these loopers. I'm going to cut about 1 yard of regular serger thread. I'm going to put 2 cut ends together, lock down my threading tubes. Okay, I'm going to put the 2 cut ends, and I'll do the lower looper first. This can be done on any of the jet airs. If you have a different brand of serger, you will have to look in your owner's manual to see how you would thread the really, really thick threads. I'm not sure for the different brands. This is why I'm spoiled rotten and I wouldn't have anything but a baby lock. Sorry. I like easy, and there is nothing easier than these baby locks. I remember when I first started working for a baby lock dealer. It was Marilyn Sewing back in Clinton, Maryland. Michael was a character. He was a rather gruff individual. And I hated sergers because I'd had an old manual serger. And I'd sooner die than thread it. And so we had a baby lock event, and they had the jet air threaders. It was the Imagine in those days. And he said, go help the teacher, hand out thread, hand out fabric, whatever you need to do. But don't tell people that sergers were designed by Satan. Because I used to think they were. They were horrible. I came home, I fell in love with it. I actually sat down and threaded it a couple times. And I haven't left since. It's been great. Okay, so I've got this thick thread, and I'm still using the B serger, but I'm going to put my stitch length down to about 1.5. I want it really little. And you know that little part I cut off? We're going to do a test stitch. So to see what it looks like. Okay, I just want to see what this is going to look like. Did I miss? No, I didn't. Okay. Just want to see. And I don't really want to cut much. That's why it helps to have a nice edge. Oh, now you can cut. I think it go a little bit longer stitch length. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now, I'm going to turn this corner, and I'm just going to let the blade cut. I know where the blade is. Okay, I've got the blade at its widest position, which means it's pretty much even with the edge of the foot. So I'm just going to let it cut. That's actually fine. If you want it wider, turn this to a 3-thread wide overlock and use your machine settings for that. Okay, so now I'm coming to the corner and I want to turn a corner, and so I'm just going to cut this even right here. Okay, so actually I'm going to cut this one also even. I want that corner pretty much even, and I don't, yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, I am going to sew until I have 1 stitch off. Okay, so the needle has just cleared it. Put the needles in the up position. I'm going to give a little bit of slack to that needle thread. I'm going to pull straight back. I'm going to turn the corner. Don't want to cut here, but I want to put the needle right at the edge of the fabric. If you don't put the needle into the, let's see if we can get a really close up there. I don't know if you can or not. Okay, see how that needle is just going into the edge of the fabric. Okay. If you stitch off the fabric, then what happens is you get an uneven corner, an icky corner. So anyway, I'm coming over here, and what I'm going to do again is I'm going to cut where I'm going. Just a little bit. Cut my corners. Just a little. Okay, again, I'm going to stitch to the edge, hand walk 1 stitch off, needle in its highest position, raise the presser foot, give the needle thread a little slack, pull straight back, clear the stitch finger. Then you're going to put the edge of the fabric right up against the blade, but we're not going to be cutting. Not yet anyway. Then that needle has to hit fabric on the first stitch. Okay, we'll go down the next row. I didn't do so hot there. Okay, this one is, don't have to do anything there. Okay, and here we go. 1 more. 1 stitch off, up, presser foot, slack. Straight back, into the corner, 1 stitch. You have to make sure that first stitch hits fabric. There we go. Okay, now we're coming to the end. I'm just going to leave this straight. Leave a few inches. Okay, let's take a look at these corners, okay? Look at that. I could have done better, but this one is really good, okay? If you don't, this one I probably didn't get it into the fabric enough, so I have a little tiny loop there. This one's okay, there's a little tiny loop, but this is a good way to finish your quilt really quick. And then what you do at the end is you stretch out your threads, cut the excess off. Then you want to use a big-eyed needle, a tapestry needle. These are double-eyed needles by Havel. Havel makes them, and we have them at the store. And so I'm going to thread. It's hard to thread this fuzzy stuff, so what you do is you just fold it in half, push it, make a slot, and there we go. Then I'm going to just weave this. Not quite. Okay, I'll weave it first. There, Lori was also telling me that there is a big darning needle that has a latch hook eye, and I'm looking to find some of those because I haven't tried them, but they sound like a great idea. Okay, and then you just pull If you like, you can put some fray block there. Trim off this excess. And your quilt is perfectly bound. Look at that. Like I said, it's just a little block here. And yes, I didn't do so neat. I'm going to fix that in a minute. And actually, I'll just run another pass and just cut it a little shorter. And just have a little pad here. But look how cute that is. I think it turned out really nice. And it was fun, quick, and easy to do. Make a quilt. And literally, this could be done in one day. I did, you know, you could just put them all together and just quilt with the walking foot, and it'll be all finished in one day, and you can have a nice quilt. And I think that, I love this look. That is absolutely darling. That's all we have. We made it through Serger month. Anyway, you guys have a great evening. See you later. Bye.